into the college football power hour. That's Jason Fitz. He's Adam Breneman, and I am Caroline Fenton. And I have to say, I think I might be guilty. I think I might be guilty of getting too caught up with Georgia falling to Alabama and a couple of weeks where they didn't look so great. Didn't put a complete game together against Auburn, and then followed that up with letting Mississippi State and a true freshman quarterback come right back into that game. Only won that one by 10, and I said, I haven't seen anything spectacular from this Georgia team. I will never count Kirby Smart out again in a big game when there's been a whole lot of anti-rat poison surrounding that program, because they went into Austin, Texas and made a statement. The Dogs take down the number one team in the country. Now nobody in the SEC is undefeated. Fitz, what do we make of it?
Yeah, I mean, this was a pretty shocking, poor effort offensively from Texas to me. Never could get the ground game rolling at all. Accuracy issues at the quarterback position. They weren't well equipped to handle the pass rush. I think it was pretty epic, the failure all over the offensive side of the ball for Texas. Not just that wasn't going to sustain. There was no way they were going to stay in this game if they couldn't manage. Now, you could talk all day long about the fact that Texas hasn't played an offense like Georgia. They haven't played a quarterback like Carson Beck. I understand all this, but to me, a lot of this was about failing from the quarterback position on Texas' side. It was about failing from their offense. They had no alternative route to find to success, Adam. I think this was a pretty jarring failure by Texas.
Yeah, Texas didn't come to play, and I was shocked, quite frankly, after, I think, last week I talked about how Texas clearly looks like the number one team in the country and they don't have a weakness. But to me, the real takeaway of the whole weekend of college football is that Georgia has their edge back. That this is the Georgia team we expected to see this season. Georgia's defense looked next level in this game. They looked like the defense, like how they looked against Clemson early in the season, week one. Their defensive line was simply unbelievable in this game. Texas had 29 rushing yards on 27 carries. The Georgia pass rush was all over Texas. Arch Manning and Quinn Ewers all night. Texas could not run the football at all and had no time in the pocket. Georgia's secondary played well. They got pressure. Georgia's able to get pressure with only 4 rushers, doesn't have to blitz, which allows them to play their 7 guys in coverage and make sure no one's open on the field. So this was one of the best defensive performances of the season. Multiple strip sacks, forced 4 turnovers. Georgia's back, and this is the Georgia defense we expect to see under Kirby Smart. Now on offense, Carson Beck has been okay. I mean, he threw 3 interceptions in this game, so still things to figure out for Georgia on offense, but overall, Georgia's got some swagger back.
You mentioned, though, Adam, you mentioned that, they were able to get pressure with 4 and the greatness of the defense. I acquiesced to a lot of that. Quinn Ewers has to do a much better job in those situations of feeling it coming. Though, right? Like that first strip sack, Quinn just didn't even feel the pressure coming to the backside. And he's got to at that point. Like that's partially on the quarterback to know where it's coming from.
Quinn Ewers took multiple sacks that he shouldn't have taken. I mean, one was on like the 2 or 3 yard line back against the end zone. He took a sack that I'm like, what? Just throw the football away. Now, the hard part, though, is that because Georgia isn't actually blitzing a lot of times and they're only rushing 4 and their edge defenders get home, nobody is open to throw the football to because there's no one open in coverage because they got 7 guys back there playing zone coverage or playing man zone. So that's the hard part. That's why getting to the quarterback with 4 is so great, because it just really challenges the quarterback.
We even saw quarterback change at one point before the half. Arch Manning came in, and then Quinn Ewers picked it back up in the second half. But Adam, you bring up a good point, and Georgia being back. And I think the Georgia being back of it all has everything to do with now Georgia is playing the defensive style that we have grown accustomed to over the past couple of seasons. Yeah. And it reminded me of that 2021 Georgia team that was winning games because of the defense. Stetson Bennett, at least in 2021, the offense evolved a lot more in 2022. But in 2021, in that national championship year, Stetson Bennett just had to do what he had to do. He got the ball in the hands of his playmakers. Just don't turn it over. Yeah. They didn't do anything overly sexy, at least on a consistent basis offensively, because defensively, they were so stifling. This year, prior to the Texas game, Georgia didn't really look all that Georgia-esque defensively. They had 11 sacks through 6 games. That's better than only one team in the SEC, and that was Mississippi State. And they were giving up 120 rushing yards per game. That was 10th in the SEC. Like, that's not Georgia defense. We saw more so that 2021, 2022, get after the quarterback, just be wherever the quarterback is, be wherever the ball is kind of defense. And you could afford Carson Beck turning the ball over 3 times. And that wasn't just like garbage time, Hail Mary, got to get the ball out. Let me just, try a risky play kind of interception. No, those were interceptions that Texas, frankly, just didn't capitalize on. And they could have made it a very different ball game had they turned Carson Beck interceptions into points.
I mean, it almost was a very different ball game with an interception that would have made it 1st and goal when they were down, I think it was 23-8 at the time. Looked like Texas was going to get all the momentum. Pass interference call changes that. I think the beginning of the second half, I really thought, Texas could come out and still make this a game. But you cannot tell me. Just look at the stat line, and I don't think stats tell the whole story. But, Adam, when you look at the stat line, and if I tell you, okay, 27 carries to 29 yards, you mentioned that already. Quinn Ewers throwing 43 times could not have been the game plan. There's just no universe where not being able to run the football and then being forced to throw that much against the front four that comes up. Like this is a worst nightmare of, at some point it's part game plan, it's part execution, but you're screwed from the outset if you get into that sort of hole that Texas felt like they were in for much of the game.
Yeah, I mean, if you combine losing the turnover battle and not being able to run the football, averaging 1 yard a carry, those two things will lose you. I mean, I would love to see the stat on losing the turnover battle and rushing and averaging under 2 yards a carry. I would guarantee you the record's like 500 and 600 for teams. So that's not the formula. You never want your quarterback, especially against a team like Georgia, throwing the ball 40 sometimes. So bad playing by Texas on offense. Georgia came to play. They're back. I think now the interesting thing, guys, to talk about is what does the AP poll look like this week? Is it Oregon at 1, Penn State, Nittany Lions at 2, Georgia at 3, or does Georgia jump? Penn State and Oregon are defeated, then Ohio State at 4. Is that the way it looks like, or does Texas? What do you think?
I will say this, Caroline. Georgia went from being the most impressive win for somebody else this season, Alabama, to having the most impressive win. Beating Texas is the most impressive thing we've seen. So, I don't know how you value being the most impressive thing that we've seen when, you can still look at the rest of the rankings and say, okay, does that make them the best of the one-loss teams? Maybe. I don't know. If I was a voter today, I would really struggle with what to do with Georgia because the one half of bad football, and they were so good in the second half of that same game that they almost erased one of the worst halves of football we've seen in a long time.
And now Georgia's one loss just looks a little bit worse than it did the day of. Like the benefit of the doubt that maybe Georgia was getting for losing to Alabama, which was then the number 1 team in the country after beating Georgia. Well, they've got 2 losses on their schedule now to Vanderbilt and Tennessee. We'll get into that game. But that kind of calls into question the quality losses versus quality wins debate that we're going to have probably every single week until the college football playoff results. But I think you would have to say that Oregon, Penn State, Ohio State at 2, 3, and 4 all just move up 1. And then Georgia at 4? I don't know.
There is not a universe where I feel good about. No offense, Breneman. I know this sounds harsh. There's not a universe where I feel like I've seen Penn State and thought that's the number 2 team in the country.
Number 2 team in the country. I'm with you. Listen,
someone's got to be the number 2 team in the country.
No, but hey,
do they?
Listen, the Big Ten is going to have 3 of the top 4 teams. 1, 2, 3, 1. Probably 1, 2, and 4 will be Big Ten teams. Good time to be a Big Ten guy. I'm just saying.
Yeah, but that's going to take care of itself when the Big Ten actually starts playing meaningful games against the Big Ten, by the way. That will take care of itself. And Caroline, I will tell you, this is a very true story. When I was a kid, I did this competition at Juilliard, right? And so, humble brag. Right. And so we all had to go in and play, right? So I won the competition. So I should have gotten a gold medal for it. I won. I had the best performance. I was given the silver medal, and the judges quite literally, I got the silver medal, and they said, you won, but that was not gold medal worthy. I think we should just do that this year with the AP poll. Just be like, the number 1 team's Oregon. 2, don't know. 3, not sure. 4, maybe Penn State. That's how I just leave them blank. Let somebody else fill it in.
It doesn't feel right. But also, there are teams that have just taken care of business and other teams have not. So you get credit for taking care of business better than other people have been able to. But the question is, what does the committee look at Georgia versus Texas versus Ohio State? A one-loss Ohio State versus a one-loss Georgia and a one-loss Texas. Where does Ohio State fit in that? And where does Miami fit in all of that? Because it does not feel right that Miami would be ranked above all three of those teams that I just mentioned, but Miami's undefeated and those three teams aren't.
Adam, what are you doing? You put Miami above all the one losses?
Right?
That's what I'm thinking about. You have to.
Yeah.
I think you have to.
Put Miami up there.
Well, Miami
even
was
though
at
Miami
6 below one-loss Georgia and below one-loss Ohio State this past week. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, but Miami just got a big win over a Louisville team that is supposedly respected. I wouldn't have a hard
time. Sources say.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
If I'm ranking the one-loss teams at the top, because Georgia beat Texas, Georgia goes above of Texas, which means Ohio State either has to go above both of them or below both of them. And right now, I put them below both of them, knowing that it'll take care of itself. Coward's way out.
Well, all I know is with no more undefeated teams in the SEC, it is only going to get more wild from here on out. It's not going to get any easier to figure all this out.
Yeah, just wait. It's going to hit your beloved Big Ten soon too.
No, it won't. Listen, Penn State's going to lose to Ohio State. Oregon and Ohio State will play in the Big Ten championship. Ohio State will win the Big Ten championship, or Ohio State will be the Big Ten automatic bid, and Oregon and Penn State will both make the playoff for the Big Ten.
Boring.
I feel like Charlie
Rutgers.
Day with the map right there trying to figure all that out. No,
yeah, you're like, what
I need way more codes. Yeah.
Give me Rutgers to upset someone or, something gross to happen in the Big Ten. If Alabama's going to lose to Vanderbilt in the SEC, then Ohio State's going to have to lose to someone ugly. It could just be Michigan.
The whole Rutgers bit and the whole Nebraska being undefeated when they play Ohio State bit really fell apart fast on us.
We'll just find a new bit.
Cold takes exposed.
And in the other battle of the heavyweights on Saturday, Alabama at Tennessee in a game that in the first half was ugly. It was penalty after turnover after penalty after overthrown receiver and bad ball. It just really felt like, Fitz, whichever team just got penalized the least would have won this game. But Tennessee takes it for the second time in a row at home against Alabama, 24-17. Now I'm asking myself, because I feel like we maybe learned some things about Tennessee, and we can get into the Tennessee side of this. Now I'm asking myself, what is Alabama now that they have 2 losses before November?
Yeah, Alabama's an undisciplined football team that finds a way to lose games. And oversimplification, good teams find a way to win, bad teams find a way to lose. And I always hate it when I hear that because life can't be that simple. But Adam, that's what we saw here. Like, you talk about the penalties, you talk about the turnovers, you talk about the disjointed offense, you talk about throws for Jalen Milroe that were, frankly, just a little out of whack for much of the game. And I can't get the fourth down out of my head. Late in the game, you got 4th and short that turns into 4th and 22 because of a 15-yard penalty that was just absolutely unnecessary. And I understand that, offsetting penalties, whatever. Now, the minute you start shoving somebody in the face mask, ref's going to see it. Like, I know it, you know it, and what we all know, the dirty thing that we're going to say all year is, wouldn't have happened under Saban. Like, he even walked to the sideline, stood there on the sideline. I didn't see anybody chewing him apart. I saw a little bit of like, hey, what are you doing? But we didn't see what Saban would do to somebody, right? Like, there's a different level of attention to detail. There's a different level of focus to greatness. All of the cheesy things that we say, Adam, it feels like it is right now what Alabama is missing.
And I'm surprised. We talked about this a lot. Kalen DeBoer replacing Nick Saban. I'm surprised at the level or the lack of discipline we see from Alabama. 15 penalties for 120-some yards today for Alabama. I mean, that is a ridiculous number. It should never be that high. And they were crucial penalties in the game. I mean, these are bad penalties in an undisciplined team. And the other part that concerned me about Alabama was the part that's made Bama's offense so good when they were clicking on all cylinders was Jalen Milroe being able to run the football and impact the game on the ground with his legs. Jalen Milroe today, 14 carries for 11 yards. That included 3 sacks, yes, but Jalen Milroe struggled. And Nick Sheridan, Alabama offensive coordinator, and Kalen DeBoer haven't been able to find ways to scheme up Jalen Milroe using his legs. And this offense, without that element, is a bad offense. They can't score points, only put up 17 points today. So this Alabama team, I mean, think about it. For Bama, you beat Georgia, and then you look up, and now you're 2-2 in SEC play. And to have any shot at making the playoff, Bama's got to win their final 5 games, which isn't the craziest thing ever. They'll probably be favored in most of those games, but it'll all come down to that November 9th matchup with LSU for Alabama to still have a shot at the college football playoff.
Let me ask you this. With that being said, guys, do you think, because you just said a 2-loss Alabama, we all understand these parameters, but as it stands right now, a 2-loss Alabama is not getting the benefit of an SEC championship game. And I do mean the benefit of a signature win and automatic berth, right? Like, so I'm looking around thinking, is there enough, understanding that they probably wouldn't even play in the SEC championship game? Is the resume with 5 more wins enough that you look at it and say, I can forgive the losses that they have along the way? I don't know.
I think it depends on what LSU looks like on November 9th, because let's say if LSU, who beat Arkansas on Saturday, they have Texas A&M next week. If LSU is able to take care of business against Texas A&M, we're talking about a top 10 LSU team, and Alabama goes into Death Valley at night. And as we saw with Ole Miss last week, not a very easy place to play. So if Alabama is able to pull a win out, then I think we start talking about the kind of resume that's able to get Alabama in an at-large capacity. But even with 2 losses, that's still 0 guarantee, and you're not hosting a playoff game. So an Alabama team's going to have to go on the road to State College, is going to have to go on the road to probably somewhere cold in December or January, and all of a sudden, your path to a national championship, and let's be fair, that's probably Alabama's fans' expectations. Whether it's Kalen DeBoer's first season or not, their expectation is a national championship when you have Jalen Milroe as your quarterback. Your path to a national championship gets much, much, much more difficult. But I understand talking about national championship expectations in a night where you got outclassed at Tennessee, I understand feels a little bit off.
But that's, Adam, real quick, I would say this. Like, we keep having this conversation about, well, are they going to get the playoff? Are we going to get the core conversation here is Alabama really worth that? Like, are they a good football team? Before worrying about their resume, man, like right now they're not playing like a playoff team. I don't really care if they get to the playoffs because they don't look like a playoff team.
They don't look like an Alabama team. I know we talk a lot about the Kalen DeBoer, how he dresses differently than Saban, and his sideline decorum is different than Saban, and he doesn't cuss like Saban cuss, and he isn't yelling at players like Saban did. But when you look at this roster, just look at who cares about how Kalen DeBoer talks to his players? Ryan Williams and Jalen Milroe are the only 2 players that I can identify on this roster. If I'm missing someone, please let me know. The only 2 players that I can identify and say, those are the kind of Alabama players that we have grown used to. You cannot live without these guys, that these are the difference makers, that those are the guys that opposing defensive coordinators are circling and saying, you don't let 4 out of the pocket, or you don't let number 2 go one-on-one. Outside of that, where are these game-wrecking Dallas Turner, Will Anderson kind of defensive players? Where are the 3, 4, 5 pass-catching weapons that Alabama normally has on their roster? Depth is something that is hard for anyone in college football to come by, but it's more than just the coaching difference. This roster, talent-wise, is just not the same as we've grown used to at Alabama.
The one reason I still have some faith in Alabama and want to see how the rest of the season plays out is because we've seen what they look like when they're playing at a high level. And when they're playing at a high level, they're one of the best teams in the country. They have one of the best wins of the year against Georgia. And I mean, that first half, I can't get that first half against Georgia out of my mind. Like, when they play well and when Jalen Milroe's playing well, they are an elite football team. When they don't play well, when they play undisciplined, they're an average SEC team that wouldn't beat half the SEC. So which version we get is still up for debate, but I want to see how the rest of the season plays out. And for both teams, Tennessee and Alabama, I don't see a world where a 2-loss Tennessee or a 2-loss Alabama miss the playoff. Now, how it plays out with the conference championship game will be interesting and all that. But I do also, we got to give some credit to Tennessee here and how Tennessee in this game won in a slugfest in a game that probably isn't built for the way Tennessee plays to win a game like that. They lost the turnover battle, still found a way to win the game. Dylan Sampson with 2 touchdowns had a really good day, and I thought Nico played well enough to win. He didn't make any crucial mistakes. He threw for a touchdown, threw an interception. He was good enough to win, and then the supporting cast supported him. And when you have a young quarterback, that's what you got to do, Fitz.
I also think the second half was sort of eye-opening and part of what makes, in this moment, Heupel outcoached DeBoer. In the second half, we saw the adjustment of taking the ball out of Nico's hands, right? The commitment to running the football in the second half and running the football out of a lot of different formations, I thought was really interesting. And frankly, it showed me that Tennessee can beat you multiple ways, which you have to be able to do. We can spread out. We can run this quick. Like, we're going to get the plays in super fast, and we're going to force feed everything that the quarterback needs to know. Like, we can do that all day. But if you want to start talking about how you become great, you also got to be able to find ways to score points, manufacture points when you can't do what you naturally do. I thought Tennessee did a beautiful job of that in the second half, Carolina. I thought that was a big difference maker here.
It was Tennessee's offense in the second half when Nico was finally able to connect with receivers in the deep ball. It's something he failed to do in the first half, with several overthrows in the first half on easy would have been touchdowns. But it was run, and continue to run the football to set up those big throws. So I thought that was a great job by Josh Heupel to draw it up that way, and by Nico Iamaleava to kind of make those adjustments to be able to connect with receivers. I still don't trust Nico Iamaleava and this Tennessee offense wholeheartedly. That, if they find themselves in the playoffs, let's say they played a playoff game next week, I don't know how much I would be able to trust Tennessee, but their defense has been picking up the slack whenever Nico hasn't been able to deliver. I mean, Jamont McCoy had one of the most beautiful interceptions, one-handed interception in the end zone, and it gave Tennessee another opportunity. An interception ended the game, and they held Alabama to less than 2.5 yards per carry. And this is a 3-headed rushing monster at Alabama between Justice Haynes, Jam Miller, and Jalen Milroe himself, that they can kill you. They should be able to kill you on the ground. But Tennessee said, you're not going to kill us on the ground game. And I don't believe Jalen Milroe had a single pass of more than 30 yards against Tennessee. That's kind of been their bread and butter. It's been running the ball, and it's been massive and plays through the air. So I thought Tennessee secondary did a really great job, and the defense stepped up enough to keep them in the game for Nico to have kind of a second half breakthrough.
And the one other part that makes me still have confidence in Tennessee despite Nico's struggles or sluggish starts is Tennessee's ability to run the football, and how having a run game is really a young quarterback's best friend, and how Tennessee was able to run the ball the second half. They ran for 200 yards against Alabama, average over 5 yards a carry. So if Tennessee can find a way to keep running the football down the stretch here in their schedule, that will help Nico so much and just take pressure off his shoulders and then allow him to do what he does best. Nico is probably at his best when he's running, when he's in the play action game, when he's taking shots down the field, when he's not having to sit and straight drop back and go through progressions. When there's these plays schemed off the run game is where Nico can really thrive, and having the run game to support that, it will allow him to play well and kind of be comfortable and ahead of the sticks in good situations.
So can I be a nerd on one thing about this game, though? There's one controversial moment for this game. 4th and 22, late. Alabama's down. They've got 3 timeouts. They elect not to kick. They elect not to punt. They're down 21-17. Instead, they go for it on 4th and 22. The broadcast questioned it. Twitter X was questioning it. Everybody's like, what are you doing? You have your 3 timeouts. Kick the ball. Take your 3 timeouts. Get the ball back. I actually thought this was brilliant strategy by Kalen DeBoer and brilliant strategy by Alabama. Hear me out. You're down 21-17. So a touchdown's the only way you win anyway, all right? You're in a situation now where, frankly, if you kick the ball deep to him, you got to kick the ball. That takes 8-9 seconds off the clock anyway, the process of punting. And then you need 3 stops. Timeout, you're going to get the ball back. That's your goal. To me, by not kicking, by going for it on 4th and 22, you at least give yourself a shooter's chance that maybe somehow, some way, you get a penalty, you get something, you convert that. If you don't convert it, you still need 3 stops. If they score, you still need a touchdown. It didn't actually change Alabama's reality at all. It saved them a few seconds on the clock. It created a situation where, frankly, they give themselves a benefit, like maybe Tennessee misses that kick, all of those different things. So I actually thought it made a lot of sense, knowing that it didn't change the points that you would have to score to continue the game. If all it did was say touchdown ties it instead of a touchdown wins it, that's not enough for me to freak out. I thought that even though the analytics say that you should kick in that situation, I think that was absolutely the right call and kind of a chess match moment from Kalen DeBoer in Alabama to understand the way it played out.
I hear you. My question is, on 4th and 22, why is the play call a pass 15 yards short of the sticks? Like, if you're going to go for it... I didn't say I like the play call. I didn't say I like the play call. Go for it. Like, do it. Don't just half-ass the sort of like, well, we'll just pitch it down to the running back and hope he's able to pick up an extra fit. No! Let it rip. You've got one of the best deep ball throwers in college football. So I totally hear you, but that's not even my issue. My issue is the play call.
Yeah, I don't necessarily love the play call, yeah.
Fitz, I wonder if the analytics even said to kick it there. I would bet that maybe the analytics were what Kalen DeBoer was following. And the analytics have gotten so risky now and how they perceive chances to go for it on 4th down and how when you're down to the game. I mean, they tell you to go for it like early in the game, the actual book the coaches follow. I'd be interested to, we will never know, but I wonder what Kalen DeBoer's book actually had there and if he was kind of going by the analytics and that's why he did that, or if he just kind of winged it and called that on his own.
Yeah, and by the way, I didn't love, because that was like a little screen sort of dump-off thing that they were doing there, but it wasn't really committal to anything. So I didn't love that. I think Caroline's right. Like, I heave the ball up, and I hope that I get, especially, how often do the officials unintentionally save a bad throw? Like, just heave the ball up there and see if you can get the official to bite on some sort of a pass interference. I would have given you a much better shot.
Yeah, no doubt. So Tennessee wins that one, and I feel like we've been able to say this for a while now, but I feel with a lot more certainty today, the SEC could be anyone's. The SEC is completely up in the air. I don't think I've seen this much parity in the SEC in a long, long time. But we will continue the conversation after just a quick break. Okay, Adam, what did we learn today?
We learned that LSU is solidified as a top 10 team, and I know you'll like that one, Caroline. They went on the road and beat Arkansas 34-10. Arkansas coming off a home win against Tennessee, and then LSU destroyed them in this game, dominated the entire time. That LSU defense is absolutely rolling. 6 sacks against Ole Miss, 3 today. The run game came alive a little bit. Freshman running back Caden Durham came on strong, had 100 yards and 3 touchdowns. So this LSU team starting to come together, and we see this with Brian Kelly a lot. They get better week by week, start to put some things together, and now LSU sits here with their only loss of the season was week 1 to USC. Felt like the sky was falling at the time. I think we had them in our sky is falling segment, but now LSU's talented, and it is all coming together for LSU at the right time.
Can we add to that, Caroline, that like college football takes care of it itself? Like if LSU, as much as we freaked out week 1, if LSU is going to get into the college football playoff, it's because they've earned their way into the college football playoff. They got A&M and Alabama coming up right back to back. Those are tough games. If LSU, and then the hope if you're an LSU fan is that you're going to find yourself in the SEC championship game, right? Like, so everything's still in front of it. It's just college football takes care of itself.
And who would have thought that through 8 weeks, Texas A&M and LSU would be in the driver's seat to be in Atlanta? Not Alabama, not Georgia. Absolutely, Texas is still in the mix. But you look at both of those teams, undefeated in the SEC. LSU's lone loss, Texas A&M's lone loss came from out-of-conference opponents. But I think the thing that can make LSU fans feel encouraged about this win is, one, you beat a good team at home at night comfortably. That is something that I can personally attest to as somebody with emotional investment into that team. That doesn't happen very often. It's something's always got to be difficult. So you took care of business and you were able to, let Garrett Nussmeier and some of the starters get some rest toward the end of the 4th quarter. The second thing is the 2 things that have really killed LSU so far this season. Obviously, penalties have been an issue, and those continue to be an issue tonight in Fayetteville. But the 2 biggest, most glaring issues that shouldn't be an issue at LSU: running the football and playing defense. Defense in general, getting after the quarterback, in the backfield, whatever it might be. Whit Weeks has emerged, Braden Swinson has emerged, and they've been fantastic up front. They were against Ole Miss, they were against Arkansas, and you just mentioned it, Adam. Caden Durham has been electric, a true freshman that has kind of emerged as being LSU's go-to guy, and delivers with the explosive plays whenever you really need them. And Garrett Nussmeier continuing to step up and make big plays and have to have it moments. So those are at least encouraging moving forward. Obviously Texas A&M is going to be a much more difficult opponent for LSU next week, but you feel encouraged that the team is addressing issues that needed to be addressed.
Yeah, I thought too that one of the good things on the LSU front that I didn't mention was, you mentioned Garrett Nussmeier. Nussmeier did not play clean football games his last two games against Ole Miss, against South Alabama. He had 2 interceptions in those games, but today against Arkansas played a clean game and managed the game well and didn't make any crucial mistakes and didn't make any dumb decisions throwing the football. That's the Garrett Nussmeier that needs to come to play, especially against a team like Texas A&M. When Nussmeier plays like that, this team's got a real chance.
Yeah, and by the way, that week 1 loss, I mean, we talk a lot about the need for preseason in college football, but that week 1 loss was one of those games that we forget could have gone either way, and the committee's not going to forget that, right? Week 1 losses are giving grace from the college football playoff team. If the playoff committee came out Tuesday, I think we would find out that the committee is much higher on LSU than the voters are and the general public is right now, simply because they are playing better football now, which they reward. They are getting better, which they reward. The first week loss is something that usually they forgive. Like, all of these things are stacking up for LSU to be valued by the committee.
I can't believe that LSU USC game was this season. It feels like it was 4 years ago, doesn't it?
It was.
I mean, a lot has happened since that game. Holy cow.
Well, even talking about the Tennessee-Arkansas game just a couple of days ago, I was like, wait, when was that? Had to have been a few weeks ago. That was last week. Last week? Was that last week? That was last week.
Yeah.
2 weeks ago, I guess. I don't know. Time just works differently in college football. I swear, the sport ages us. What did you learn, Fitz?
I've decided that the SEC championship game is going to become the ultimate Hail Mary. And by that, I mean, like, right now, we've talked about teams with 2 losses in the SEC. One of those 2 lost teams, inevitably, the way they're going to beat up on each other is going to try and get into the SEC championship game. If that happens, what really becomes interesting to me is it's all or nothing. If you're a 2-loss team in an SEC championship game and you take an L, you're now a 3-loss team. Hard for me to figure out how a 3-loss team stands out as top 12, right? That feels difficult. But if you win, all of a sudden, the difference between the have and the have-not, a loss in the SEC championship game could keep you out of this thing entirely, even at the 12-team field. And a win gets you a guaranteed top 4 seed in a home field and a bye. Like, that difference is such a staggering difference to me. It's funny because I think we're going to see over the course of the next several years what we're learning in this playoff. The coaches are going to be hired and fired based on whether or not they were able to survive the Hail Mary of a championship game for your conference when you have this kind of year. It's wild to think about, but I'm really starting to get to the point where if I'm a 2-loss team, I'd rather not make my conference championship game, not get that 3rd L,
No doubt.
Stay out of all of that fray and say, you know what? We're over here with only 2 L's. Take us anyway. It's staggering to me.
I was talking to a coach in the Big Ten about something, same topic with the Big Ten, talking about the Big Ten championship. And the comment the coach made was, do you really think we want to play the Big Ten championship game? No, we want to just miss the Big Ten championship game and then not get steamrolled by Ohio State right before the playoff committee makes their selection. So, I mean, that's what it is. And you think about, we just talked about the Alabama, 2-loss Alabama, 2-loss Tennessee. I mean, if Tennessee were to make the conference championship game, they'd be 10-3, and Alabama's 10-2. But Alabama, Bama would be ranked ahead of Tennessee at that point if they lost in the SEC championship game. So it's just for missing the title game. So I mean, 100% that the SEC championship game will become a win or go home game for those 2-loss teams.
It's like the old quote, it's better to be kept silent and be thought a fool than to speak and remove all doubts. Like, that is I'd rather stay out of the conference game and be like, hey, that way you get into that conference title game and you lose it. Now you have removed any sort of but for the committee. It's tough.
And it's not even that. Even if you do still get into the college football playoff, well, you don't get a bye, and you are coming off of a really tough and competitive game in your conference championship game. You've got to turn around and maybe even go on the road in a playoff game. Like, that's a lot. The more games that you play, the higher risk of injury, and you don't get that bye in return. The only way that I could see that coming back and, biting a team in the butt, not getting to the conference championship game, is, let's say there's a 1-loss team and a 2-loss team playing in the conference championship game. Well, if that 2-loss team wins the conference championship, well, that other team, the 1 loss going into the conference championship, also probably gets the edge into the playoff over that team that didn't even play in the conference championship to begin with. So you're kind of, I mean, there's nothing that you can do about it. You're not the conference championship game. There's nothing that you can really do. But I do keep that in mind of how will the committee view a team that played and lost in the conference championship versus a team that was sitting on their couches. But Fitz, what did you learn today?
No, that was what I learned. I learned everything. That I'm learned. That was me.
It's not
what did you learn? The real question is,
he said, "I'm learned. I'm learned.
I'm done.
I'm fully learned. I am fully learned." There you go.
What did you learn, Caroline?
I did my learning. I love, Adam, that you brought up an SEC team because I'm going to Uno reverse card you and do the most Adam Breneman, the best Adam Breneman impression that I could think about. Give Indiana some damn respect. And put Curtis Rourke firmly in the Heisman Trophy conversation. I will be the first one to admit that up until today, I thought that Indiana was a really fun story. And it was that team that I felt like so much of college football could get behind, kind of like Vanderbilt. It's the underdog. It's the team that's getting a whole lot of recognition. It's the program that doesn't have a long history of winning, and now they're nationally relevant. It felt like a really cute story, and I was like, surely, at some point, the college football gods are going to speak, and the big dogs are going to separate themselves. I thought Indiana made a massive, massive statement today doing what they did against Nebraska. That was sheer and utter humiliation against Nebraska. And Indiana did it against the 13th ranked defense in all of college football. They were able to drop 40-45 on Northwestern with the 110th ranked defense. And I don't think they played a team with a defense better than 60th in the country. They turn around and drop 56 on a Nebraska team that, to be fair, they're not world beaters. I don't see them as playoff contenders. They're not the greatest team in all of college football, but that was the first big test for Indiana so far in their season. And they didn't just pass that test. They passed it with flying colors. I was so impressed with what I saw from the Hoosiers today, Adam.
Indiana isn't just winning. They are absolutely dominating everyone they play. They're 7-0. Every win has been by double digits. They have not trailed one time this entire season. Listen, Indiana better be ranked ahead of every team with 2 losses in this week's AP poll, including Alabama. They should jump Boise State. They should jump Texas A&M, who just had a close game Mississippi State. This Indiana team is legitimate. And Curtis Rourke's playing like one of the best quarterbacks in the country. He's experienced. He did have a hand injury today. I think he's fine, though. I think
Curtis the second half.
Yeah, he was out a little bit, but, I mean, this is an Indiana team that is legit, and their offense is one of the best in the country. And it's looking pretty real that Indiana could travel to Columbus, Ohio at 10-0 to go play Ohio State. And that will be a legendary matchup.
He doesn't believe.
Sure.
I can see his. He doesn't like something I said. I don't know what it is.
Florida International, Western Illinois, UCLA, Charlotte, Maryland. Indiana's the ultimate small town rock star. Yeah, like you live in the middle of nowhere and you think that guy's a really good rock star, and you're like, wow, that's awesome. Then he moves to the big city and you find out he's not all that great. Like Indiana's fine. It's a cute story. It's fun. We can look at it and say, wow, this is really awesome. And I'm sure game day's going to go there. It's going to be this big huzzah. Everybody's going to have this great, Indiana moment, and then they're going to play an actual real powerhouse team, and they're going to come crashing down to earth. Because if we're being honest, if we injected true serum in your veins, Adam Breneman, if you had to bet your house on Alabama versus Indiana on a neutral field, we know damn well that bet ain't going to Indiana. So we can see
we're having two different conversations.
Are you using my neutral field line against me?
Neutral field line.
If they played 10 times. But we're having two different conversations, right? Like, I'm not saying Indiana's going to win the national championship. Like, I'm not picking Indiana to beat Ohio State when they play later on this season. All I'm saying is Indiana, to me, is more than just a cute story now. Because I look at the rest of their schedule. Washington, at Michigan State, at home against Michigan, at Ohio State, and then at home against Purdue. I see one loss on the rest of their schedule.
That's fine.
They're 11-1.
Look, I'll use another Indiana analogy. Like, you guys are too old to remember the Music Man, like the old musical, 76 trombones, like they would carry Indiana. Like, this is the Music Man. Like, they're selling the band costumes. Everybody's buying into it. There will be no performance at the end. Like, I don't care if they're 10-1. They're not going to be like, this is not the same 10-1 that we're going to see from any of the juggernauts that we look at as 10-1. We know it. We just don't want to say it because it's a cool story.
Caroline, don't try to backtrack on your Indiana talk here. I mean, you should own this. I mean, you just said Curtis Warren's a Heisman contender.
It is.
I think he is. I love.
And the Heisman Trophy winner last year didn't beat Alabama. You don't have to be able to beat Alabama in order to be a Heisman Trophy contender. But all I'm saying, I'm not saying that they're a national championship contender. And I've never said that. I'm not backtracking. That was never my point.
Would a 10-1
my point was,
Indiana?
You're no longer a Cinderella. I now view you as a legitimate team. Like, you're no longer just a fun story that we can talk about and we can say #6 inside.
This is just not the friendliest thing to say, but like they're a Paducah 10, and like that's an old phrase, like Paducah, Kentucky. If anyone's ever been to Paducah, Kentucky,
Paducah,
like it's small town.
Has the best Jimmy John's I have ever been to in my life.
Paducah's fine.
I have no clue
Paducah's a small town in Kentucky, and you might know the local girl at the ball, the prettiest girl in the ball at Paducah. She's a solid 10 in Paducah. She moves to New York, she's like a 4. Like, it's just that's what Indiana is. Like, there's this Indiana's a solid 10 for great stories of awesome. Like, wow, I just love how good this makes me feel about college football. But it's Indiana. They're fine.
Let's actually have this conversation. Adam, Indiana and Alabama play on a neutral field.
Oh, I hate that you're doing this to me.
Today, who wins? What's the score? Who's favored? And by how much?
Alabama's favored by
13 and a half?
points.
Yeah,
10 maybe.
Yeah, 7.
And I would certainly take Alabama in a head-to-head matchup in that game right now. Listen, I'm just trying to give Indiana some hype, and you're making me think about it critically now, Fitz, with your neutral site comment. I think, listen.
That's because I'm the thief of all joy on this show. That's what I'm just like every week.
We're just trying to show Indiana love here, and you got us. Now we're both backtracking our Indiana hype.
No, you can show some teams love without saying that they're not going to be the best teams in all of college football.
Here's the thing. Fair. Here's the one thing to think about though. Just think about Matt Rule at Nebraska building this program and gets just dominated by first-year head coach Kirk Cinetti in Indiana. Matt Rule at Nebraska, and that entire Nebraska program puts every ounce of resources into their program. They've been recruiting their butts off. They signed a 5-star quarterback. Matt Rule is bringing in a bunch of transfers, trying to figure the thing out. And Indiana, for once in 20 years, says, let's try being good at football this year. And Kirk Cinetti comes in year 1 and now has them 7-0, and they beat Nebraska 56-7.
Leroy Jenkins to Nebraska.
Yeah, it's crazy. Matt Rule's got to be like, what the heck's going on? Why can't I do that?
I mean, it wasn't fluky in the slightest. The backup quarterback was in the entirety of the second half, and they just continued to put their foot on the gas pedal. I mean, Fitz's disdain for not just the Hoosiers, but dare I say the entire state of Indiana, makes me want to go even harder for the Hoosiers.
Wow.
Or the entire Big Ten.
I love the Big Ten. I don't know what you're talking about. Like, I am. Look, Breneman, you weren't here last week. We actually named an award after you. Like, the Brenny, it's a new award where we give Big Ten love out. Like, we are in on this. The Brenny has a nice ring to it. Like, I'm all in. I think I watch more Big Ten than most people that don't live in the area and don't have ties to it. I have nothing but respect for the wonderful people of Indiana. And it's just a cute, fun little story, isn't it?
Adam, we said that we were going to pick our Adam Breneman game of the week, and it was the game that was going to be like 10-3, and it was going to be like kind of overcast and like 40 degrees, just like perfect Big Ten typical Adam Breneman football. That's our Brenny. Our Brenny of the week.
I love that. I'm glad you guys named an award after me. Even when I was gone, I was calling the Middle Tennessee Kennesaw State game, which is like, I mean, I would have much rather been on College Football Power Hour. Trust me.
I will say
That's what everybody says.
this week's Big Ten Brenny, the BTB, the Big Ten Brenny Award goes to Michigan State beating Iowa, because you really got to love, like, if you were watching Michigan State Iowa, then you love the Big Ten, and I love that for you. Like, that was a heck of a win for Michigan State. There we go. See, we got Big Ten Brenny love.
That's good stuff. Let's go.
Let's go. All right. Stock up, stock down coming up next. College Football Power Hour Stock Exchange. Fitz, whose stock is up after Saturday?
I feel like it's impossible to get any higher, but man, Cam Ward, he genuinely has to be Superman. And it's wild to me to watch, particularly the second half of another game where it feels like there is no margin for error for this kid. He's got to be perfect on every drive. He's got to use his legs. He's got to use his arm. His accuracy, I thought today, so, like, when you're talking about tight window throws, was absolutely through the roof. He threw guys open in ways that I thought was beautiful to watch. And then also when they needed a huge first down, he got it with his legs fearlessly several times. I'm watching Cam Ward single-handedly say, you know what? I'm not going out this way. We're not going out this way, week after week after week. When the rest of the team fails him at him, Cam just rises above everybody. It's pretty Herculean.
It's unbelievable. And really, Miami's not that good of a football team from what I see. I mean, their defense is not very good. Offensive line is struggling a bunch, but Cam Ward has played electric enough to keep winning these football games and to put up 52 points against Louisville, whose defense has played pretty decent all season long. Extremely impressive. And Cam Ward's, usually when you have a quarterback who makes as good of plays and as many big highlight plays as Cam Ward does, normally that comes with a quarterback that turns the football over a lot, or a quarterback that takes too many chances or takes too much risk or puts the ball on the ground. Cam Ward hasn't done that. I mean, no interceptions today against Louisville. He has taken care of the football and had the ability to also drive the ball down the field, which is the hardest combo for a quarterback to do. We see quarterbacks all over the country not be able to combine the two. And Cam Ward has shown he's right up there in the top few in the Heisman conversation, Caroline.
Before you get to your stock down, Fitz, I'm going to butt in there and interject my stock down, because my stock down was Miami's defense. And it is so frustrating to me to watch how bad Miami's defense is, and then to go watch Cam Ward be absolute freaking Superman, not just because he can be, but because he has to be. Against Cal, he had, 300 yards in the fourth quarter alone, just because Miami had to dig themselves out of the hole that the defense dug themselves into. I mean, they gave up 450 yards to Louisville. They gave up touchdowns on 3 consecutive possessions in the second half. They scored on 4 of their 5 possessions in the second half. I mean, like, Miami's defense at least got a defensive touchdown. Like, sure, you get a cookie and a gold star for that. But it reminds me so much of LSU last year. How Jaden Daniels had to put the entire team on his back because the defense gave up a touchdown on every single play. It was almost like, okay, well, hurry up and have him score a touchdown so Jaden Daniels can get the ball back and do some sort of magic. It's exactly how I feel watching Cam Ward in Miami is. Hurry up, let him score, get the ball back, because I want to watch Cam Ward do something amazing. It feels like every single week, Miami's defense is teetering on the edge of just a total and complete breakdown, and it feels unsustainable, the way that Miami's winning football games. I mean, Cam Ward can be Superman, but Fitz, can he be Superman every single week, especially when we get into the postseason?
I feel like Cam Ward at this point is singing "Anything You Can Do, I Can Do Better" to Shedeur Sanders. Like, I watched Cam today thinking everything that we constantly make of, Heisman Trophy candidate, NFL draft prospect Shedeur Sanders. Cam's just doing a better job of all of it. And can he be this Herculean? Yeah, because he has. Should he be? No. And would I bank on that through the playoffs? No, because like the variable with the playoffs is if you are incapable of playing complementary football, you will get got, because eventually you will take on a team that won't let you get away with things. And I feel like at some point, to Adam's point, I don't think Miami's a great football team. When they take on an actual real football team that we believe is great, not just good, Louisville's good, when they take on a great the margin for error will no longer be there.
Yeah. But despite how bad Miami's defense is and all those other parts of their team, you look at their schedule and their offense might just be good enough to lead them to an undefeated season. I mean, even despite how bad they've been on defense. And Miami scored 50 points in 4 games this season so far, and barely halfway through the season. So really unbelievable job by Cam Ward. He should return to, I think, probably being the odds-on Heisman favorite after this week, too, with that performance, after kind of taking a fall off. But what a week by Cam Ward. Fitz, who's your stock down of the week?
So I want to start a tradition on the College Football Power Hour.
Oh,
I want us to get
go.
I want to get little like glass Coke bottles, and I want to write the name of a team, put it up, put it in the bottle, and just put it out in the water and let it go into the ocean. There are certain times in every single season where you can say, you know what? Your team is no longer just bad. Your team is no longer worth talking about. We are not needing to have any more conversation about. We can cross you off the list, put a check mark after it. You're dead. Your season's done. You're gone. You are out to sea. And that's where I am with Michigan. Michigan is not good. And we talk about every week the problems with Michigan football. But now we can finally put this whole thing to bed and say, you know what? In a rebuilding year, congrats. You still got your championship banner. Who cares? You are the national champion until somebody else is crowned as such. Enjoy that right now. Michigan fans, instead of wasting your Saturday watching these games, go back and rewatch last year's games. It's a lot more fun for you. You know how it works out. Your team is not good this year. Your team can still not throw the football. Your team, luckily, hopefully, is going to be in basketball school. So I think what we should all do is just put the little name into the Coke bottle, put the lid on it, and send it out. And some island in the middle of nowhere is going to be really confused in about 3 months when they get a bunch of bottles with a bunch of teams. But the first of them is Michigan.
Maybe the first one's probably Florida State. The second one's probably
fair.
Michigan. The second one's Michigan. No love for Illinois?
Illinois and Indiana can battle it out in the That's Cute Bowl. Go ahead.
No love for the Midwest.
Illinois did what they had to do to beat Michigan, though, and beat Michigan at their own game, and like literally played Michigan football better than Michigan plays Michigan football. I mean, Michigan's in serious trouble. Like they're not. I mean, their schedule is tough. They got Ohio State, Oregon, and Indiana left on that schedule. I mean, it is not good for Michigan moving forward.
Michigan State. This is 2 mentions for Sparty in this show.
The hill that you are going to die on that is named Michigan State.
Sparty's better than I thought they would be. Sparty's better than I thought they would be. I thought they were going to be just an abject disaster this year. Instead, they're plucky. All right, they're a plucky disaster. You know, and I'll take a plucky disaster.
Indiana's not plucky. They're a cute story.
Indiana's a cute story. That's better than plucky. I shouldn't have to make these delineations here. I mean, what are we doing?
I saw one last thing on Michigan. I saw one of my buddies texting me a stat. Michigan didn't run a single offensive play in Illinois territory until 4 minutes to go in the second quarter. That's how bad their offense was today.
Ew.
I mean, that's unbelievable.
They didn't run a single offensive play in the first half that didn't make their fans go, ugh. That's just...
It's painful. It truly is painful to watch Michigan. But whose stock is up for you, Adam?
My stock up this week is going to be Army and Navy Academy football.
Let's go.
Both Army and Navy are undefeated. I was on the call today for Navy's win against Charlotte. Navy won 54-17, something like that. I mean, just dominated the game from start to finish. Their quarterback, Blake Horvath, is unbelievable. They're so good on both sides of the ball. They're explosive on offense. They had 5 turnovers on defense, 2 pick sixes. And then Army. You guys know I've called a bunch of Army games this year. They beat East Carolina today. So both Army and Navy undefeated. Army scoring 42 points a game. Navy's averaging 44 points a game. Navy now, next weekend, has Notre Dame in the Meadowlands at MetLife Stadium. ND's red hot right now, but I'm telling you, I guarantee you Marcus Freeman's not sleeping tonight thinking about how he's going to stop Navy's offense, because they are humming and clicking on all cylinders. So Army and Navy, hats off to them, America.
It's no longer we want Bama. You know, the team that's playing really well and is beating everybody. Like, we want Bama. No. It's we want Navy or we want Army. Like, everybody wants an opportunity to beat these teams, because you're right. I mean, it has been so fun to watch the success that these teams have had.
You know what I want? I want everyone to stop lying to us during the Army-Navy game. Like, and I've said this to you guys before, but let's be real. Every year, the Army-Navy game, it's blown up as this is the most important game in college football all year because what it means. If we really believe that, if we really want to sit here in December and talk about how important the Army-Navy game is, how in the hell are we not paying attention to the fact that Army and Navy, independent of having to play each other, are playing meaningful college football? How are we not paying attention to the fact that Notre Dame needs this Navy win in order to help boost their playoff chances? Like, this is an incredibly important game. If we wake up tomorrow and find out game day isn't going to this one, then it's all a fraud. Like, don't come at me in December and tell me how incredible we're supposed to make the Service Academy game if you will not value a Service Academy game that is meaningful to college football in the regular season.
Well, and if you look at the rest of Notre Dame's schedule, USA. If you look at Notre Dame's schedule, the only teams that they have left that can boost their college football playoff schedule are Army and Navy. It's Navy at home against Florida State. Win against Florida State isn't doing anything for your resume. Virginia, and then they finish out the season against USC, which, I mean, I guess beating USC is better than losing to USC, but those are the two ranked teams left on their schedules, Army and Navy. Like, that's Notre Dame's path, is beating both of those teams.
That's wild.
Yeah. I can't wait to hear all the excitement when Navy beats Notre Dame and Navy is like top of the college football world, top 10 team in the country. It'll be
Northern Illinois and Navy.
Yeah, we'll see if it happens. So it'll be fun. It's
too
fun
much,
to see these academy
too much positivity.
Teams
We got too much positivity.
Ruin someone, Adam. Stop down.
Stop down.
Ruin someone's day.
Yeah. USC and Lincoln Riley. USC lost to Maryland 29-28. Lincoln Riley, I was just when Lincoln Riley left Oklahoma, he might have taken two college football programs down with him in the way it happened, Oklahoma and USC. And I like Lincoln Riley. Like, great guy. He's been great to me, but it's just tough to like find an excuse for him at this point with the losses. And I have defended USC on this show. I just put USC as like the 5th best team in the Big Ten last week. I mean, you can't lose to Maryland. At Maryland, I mean, just a bad loss for USC. I just saw Lincoln Riley's lost like 9 of his last 14 games or something because of how they ended last season. USC can't do anything right. They are bad on defense, and it's typical issues that we've seen from Lincoln Riley's teams in the past. They aren't good at running the football. They give up too many points. And Maryland was a team that has not been playing well. They're having a bad season. So you think back again to that first week 1 team, but a week 1 game between USC and LSU. LSU is now a solidified top 10 team, and USC is 3-4. So, and everyone was talking after that week 1 game about how great USC's defense was going to be. USC's defense is back. And then Billy Edwards, Maryland's quarterback, throws for 400 yards on USC's defense. So stock down is without a doubt Lincoln Riley and USC this week.
Caroline, it's funny to me. We spent the beginning of the year joking that we'd have to take a shot every time somebody talked about the 1,400 pounds that USC put on. I think what we found out is that we were all shoveled 14 pounds of BS. Like, none of this is just worth. Like, at this point, USC again. Maybe we can add USC to the little bottles. We can put USC in the bottle. Poof, throw them out. Poof, throw them out.
Yeah, no, I'm with you there. I mean, it's great that you put on 1,400 pounds of muscle in the off season. I don't know what that got you. But that's good and all. You know, it was a really good selling point. It was really fun to talk about in July. It's how thick this defensive front got, but what's it going to get you? 2 C's, maybe even 3. Hell, 1,400 pounds, that's 3 C's worthy. I have to wonder, like, where did USC fans expect to lie in the hierarchy of the Big Ten? I don't know the answer to that. It was the expectation of this is our first year in the Big Ten, and it's going to take some time for our defense to kind of bridge that gap. Or because my understanding was USC fans and that the expectations for that USC program was we're going to be in conversation as one of the best teams in the Big Ten. That it's going to be Ohio State and Oregon and USC and Penn State. But it's very obvious USC does not belong in that conversation. Nowhere close, Adam.
It really is crazy to think about how close those 4 losses have been for USC. I just pulled up their schedule. Michigan by 3 points, Minnesota by a touchdown, Penn State in overtime by 3. Penn State converted 2 fourth-down plays to get the game to overtime, and Maryland by 1 point. So, I mean, they've been right there. That's what combined 14 points for 4 losses. Just so many heartbreaking losses for Lincoln Riley. And I saw in his post-game press conference, he got asked, why can't your team find a way to win close games? And his answer was, I don't know. I'm like, well, that's not a good enough answer. I mean, I don't know. What's the path forward for USC? How do they get to compete at this level? Clearly, the next step was the defense has to get better and more physical, and it just hasn't been done.
All right, Caroline, we already told us who you're down on. Who are you up on? Now, let's end on a positive note with this.
So I have had so much fun just following along with the absolute madness that is the Big 12. Like the fact that it almost feels like whenever you're looking at maybe like a kid's in a classroom, and it's like there's one kid that's putting together a really pretty little art project, and there's this other kid over here that's got like glitter and paint and macaroni, and it's like this kid you can tell is just like all over the place. Like that's what I feel like the Big 12 is. Like you have the Big 10 and the SEC with dominating the conversation with all of these teams that could be national title contenders, and they're taking care of business and they're doing the things that they're supposed to do, and there's the Big 12 over here that's just like the redheaded stepchild of college football. So stock up to both Iowa State and to BYU for both taking care of business today. It was not an easy one for Iowa State fans, but they both take care of business today. I don't think either of these teams really deserve to be in the college football playoff, but at least one, if not both of them, are going to end up in it. So in a conference that's been nothing but weird and gross, and albeit incredibly fun to watch, both of these teams have found a way to be undefeated.
I mean, I just sit here and think Iowa State is the number 9 team in the country, and I don't see it that way. It doesn't resonate to me that way, but at some point, the opportunity is there. Part of the reason that conferences fought for inclusion in the college football playoff and an automatic bid is they didn't want to end up with a system that didn't allow every conference to be represented. If you're the Big 12, at some point, you just bury your head and say, I don't care what anyone else thinks. Somebody from the Big 12 is going to get a first-round bye, likely, and home field event, like the top 4 conference champions. So presuming that somebody from the Big 12 finishes ahead of the group of 5, they will get a first-round bye, and they'll have home field in the first round. Like that's incredible when you think about the opportunity that's there. I just don't look at Iowa State, Adam, and think, wow, this is a top 10 football team that's on the precipice of a national championship. But statistically, I guess they are, like, technically.
Yeah, and I felt this whole time the Big 12 would beat each other up, and Oklahoma State would beat BYU, and Oklahoma State would have a bad season after that. But right now, we got BYU and Iowa State undefeated, and BYU with that, found a way to win the game against Oklahoma State on Friday night. I like that BYU quarterback, Jake Retzlaff, I think his last name is.
BYU.
Yeah,
BYU.
Yes, BYU. He is, he can play now. He can throw the football around. He's a fun guy to watch. And now BYU, the rest of their schedule has some games that are going to be tough. The one I'm looking at is at Arizona State, second to last game of the year. Hopefully Arizona State finds a kicker by that point. After we saw Kenny Dillingham's plea for a new kicker at Arizona State. So Big 12 is going to be fun to watch. Yeah, it's going to be interesting. Yeah, open tryouts to Arizona State. Did you see his press conference? He literally was like, we are, what did he say? He said our kicking game is atrocious. And if anyone, please email me if you're a kicker at Arizona State.
Why do I feel like everybody that lines up for McAfee's game day kick is now suddenly thinking, I can kick. I'm coming. Yeah. I'm coming. Coach, put me in. I can kick.
Any armchair quarterback that's complained about college kicking at any point in their day is going to line up and say, I can do that. And then, wide left. But Fitz, you bring up a point that has frustrated me so much in having conversations with just college football fans in general. Like, let's say, for example, I'll say that I don't think that Alabama is going to make the college football playoff. Just for example, if I say that, the response is, well, name me 11 teams better. And my response is always, well, that's not what it is. That's not what it's about. It's not just about who do you think are the best 12 teams in all of college football. Yeah. I do not think that Iowa State on paper is the 9th best team in college football, but that doesn't matter. Because they've won all of the games on their schedule, and the way that the playoff is aligned is that if they continue to stay undefeated, they will be in the playoff, and they will get a first-round bye. So it's not just about who are the 12 best teams in the country. It's about playing the game, and the playoff game, rather.
which is why I hated the decision the way they did it. I understand why they wanted this for college football, but I think we are absolutely steaming towards some sort of mega college football universe. And if we're going to do 12 teams in a playoff, all I ever wanted was the 12 best teams. In a beautiful world, to me, the committee would have no regard for what conference you're in, no regard for any of that. They would simply pick the 12 best teams. But Caroline, you are so right. That is not what they do. I mean, I got to remind everybody repeatedly, the top four, the Power Four conferences are all going to get an automatic bye. The highest ranked group of 5 team is an automatic bye. So there are only 7 at-larges. So the question on all of these teams isn't, are they one of the 12 best? It's, if they don't win their conference, is this one of the 7 that will get in? That's such a different conversation. You really have to couch it that way.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt. That is going to do it for us today. Appreciate everyone for coming to hang out. Like the show, rate, review, subscribe, tell your friends, tell an Indiana fan, because they're having the best seasons of their lives. All two of them. And they're just, their perfect season is getting ruined by Jason Fitz. So tell them.
Ask him to leave the basketball arena long enough to watch the football game. Go ahead. I'm just throwing all the shades.
It's a football school now.
Sure.
It's a football school. That's what they told me. That's what both of them told me. But we'll be back here on Wednesday morning with another edition of the College Football Power Hour.